Public Library Association has partnered with AT&T. What they've done is they've created the workshop that I'm about to provide. So what's nice about it is all the materials, the PowerPoint presentation, it's all been prepared by other librarians who have more of a skill at that sort of thing than maybe I do. So I'm going to share their materials. Now, I wanted to give a little bit of extra background in that I went to a webinar yesterday with the Public Library Association as a part of this program. And what we're finding out is from other librarians who've already presented these courses that they typically have been taking around 2 hours to complete. So we've planned this particular workshop to be an hour and a half. So we are going to have to wrap up right around 3:30 because I have another program starting at 4 o'clock that I have to prepare for in between 3:30 and 4. But as I was looking at the materials for this particular workshop on cybersecurity, it's almost divided into 2 separate topics. One is talking about how to recognize a secure website and how to create a password, a secure password. And then the second portion deals with how to avoid being scammed by what they're calling fraudsters online. So as we progress through this workshop, if we find that we are running a little bit longer, and that's fine if we are, because I want to encourage questions and discussion. What we might end up doing is just splitting this workshop into 2 parts. First part, we could talk about how to recognize secure websites and create a strong password. And then if we need to wrap up early and possibly have a second workshop in a few weeks that talks about how to avoid online scams from the fraudsters, we can do that.
That'd be good.
So I'm gonna, at this point, basically start sharing the PowerPoint presentation. I did email to the Love Living at Home folks a couple of extra handouts. They're not necessary to print or have on your computer because those handouts are also included in the PowerPoint. So the key is if we can follow along, if you have a notebook and pencil or pen handy, that would be useful. But when it comes to the part where we have to do the learner activity, we don't necessarily have to do that on the handout they provided because we're all meeting virtually by Zoom. So if you could at least have a pen and a piece of paper handy to go over those worksheets, that would be useful. And so I'm going to start sharing the PowerPoint now. Okay. Let me go to slideshow here. Okay. Is everybody seeing this part okay?
Yes.
Great. This is just the title page, Cybersecurity Basics. As far as, like I said, the Public Library Association and Digital Learn created this PowerPoint. All I had to do was enter the library's logo and my name and the library's name. The agenda for today, we're going to talk about cybersecurity. We're going to hopefully develop some skills throughout this. At the end, we'll talk about some additional tips and tricks, and we'll wrap up by reviewing. The practice part is more of like a review of what we learned at the beginning of the presentation. Okay, so introduction, why do we need to be concerned about safety when we're online? And so I will, if anyone has any thoughts they'd like to share about this, if not, I can share some personal experiences from recent. But does anyone want to answer that? Why do we need to be concerned about being safe online?
Well, we don't want our personal identification information stolen.
Right, right. So April was an interesting month for me. Our family had COVID at the beginning of April, and about a week later, I found out that actually my identity was stolen. So, and I always consider myself like very conscious of these tips and trips we're about to go over. So, but that's exactly what June just said. We want to try to avoid having that happen if possible. I'm still not sure how it happened with me personally, because I do feel like I I never use the same password. I try to make the passwords as secure as possible, but it still happened. So we're gonna go over some steps to hopefully prevent this from happening to anybody in attendance right now. All right, next slide. We said we share our personal information online, so we want to make sure we keep it private.
How do you know if you've been compromised?
So in my case, I received an email from, I believe it was Bank of America, saying that my new credit card will be arriving in the mail soon. And because I didn't create a new account recently with Bank of America, that was the red alert for me.
Mhm.
Okay,
Thank
so next slide. The fraudsters, so this is where what happened to me. The fraudsters may try to gain access. So in my reality, they actually didn't try. They succeeded in gaining access to some of my personal information, and they opened a Bank of America credit line. Any questions so far? Cool. All right. So cybersecurity, we want to make sure our personal data is not accessible to others. We also want to make sure that the devices we are using are working properly and are free from malware, which I believe is abbreviation for malicious software. So they basically combine two words into one. Malicious software is malware. In the second portion of this workshop, we'll talk about how to avoid getting the malware on our devices. So secure websites. Why does a website need to be secure? And I feel like we've kind of really addressed that already. If we're sending our personal information back and forth across the internet, we want to make sure that the website we are sending this information to is a secure website. So the next couple slides are going to help us identify secure websites. So again, if you're going to enter personal information, you want to make sure you keep your information safe. That's why the website needs to be secure. Okay. So on this screen, if you're seeing that, okay, the two at the very top of the replica of the web browser, there's a couple of items highlighted in green. There's a padlock, and then there's also HTTPS://. That's what you want to look out for when you want to make sure that the website is secure. If you see that icon of the padlock, that is an indication that that website is secure. You also want to make sure that there's the S behind HTTP. So HTTPS:// and then the website address indicates that that is a secure website. So on this next slide, it's red because it wants to kind of alert you that we don't see the padlock. Instead, we see the exclamation point, which typically won't be there with a real website. But so there's the exclamation point indicating that there is no padlock. And there's also just HTTP://. So without the S, this is indicating that this website is not a secure website. Any questions about that? Okay. Okay, personal accounts. What kind of accounts are created online? And why would someone create an account on a website? So do we have an example of anyone in the audience who has created an account online?
What does it mean by an account online?
So basic examples would be like anyone who has an email address, basically that's an account, that's an online account.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
We all do.
Yeah. So if you've ever shopped online, you've created an account online with whoever that retailer is. The most popular one, Amazon. So if we've ever purchased something from Amazon, we've created an account with Amazon.com. I suppose even like you all hopefully have a library card. So you have an account with a library. So if you ever wanted to borrow an ebook, you would use our ebook service provider, Overdrive, or their Overdrive app, which is called Libby. That's also would be considered like having an online account, because that's, I mean, borrowing ebooks is all done completely through computers and apps.
So are our accounts that we create to access our physicians, is that considered online too?
Yeah, I think it's a good example because at this point, a lot of physicians are using the patient portal. We've all heard of the patient portal where we enter a username and password, and maybe we need a refill, a prescription refill. So we go, instead of calling the doctor these days, we can just enter the patient portal and ask them to refill our prescription that way. So, and I would hope that if your physician is using the patient portal, that I'm going to assume the website they're using is also going to have the padlock icon and the HTTPS. So I'm gonna go, unless there's another question, I'm going to go ahead and move to the next slide.
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
The padlock icon, is that universal across all browsers and platforms?
It should be.
Okay. thank you.
One thing I was, as preparing for this workshop in my notes, it said if you don't see the padlock at the very least, you want to see the HTTPS.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to rewind a couple slides here. So on this
Hey.
example, if you don't see the padlock for whatever reason, if it doesn't have that S there, then that's an indication that website is not secure.
Tom, I have a quick question. You know, these hackers and people who do these things, fraudsters, they're pretty sophisticated.
Mhm.
Create a website with the S at the H at the end and a padlock.
They could potentially. Like I said, I always considered myself pretty careful when I create my passwords and when I'm visiting websites, and I unfortunately still had my identity stolen. The police officer that I spoke to mentioned the dark web, which I don't know a whole lot about personally, but that's because I don't recall creating an account with Bank of America. They were wondering if somehow some of my information ended up on the dark web.
Mm.
So,
But in other words, if you get into a website with the padlock and with the S,
mhm,
it's not 100% that will be safe either, because it could have been created by a very sophisticated fraudster.
that's possible.
And how did you get rid of it? Did you call Bank of America directly or?
Yeah, well, yeah, so it was a whole process. The Federal Trade Commission has a website dedicated to identity theft. So I spent a lot of time on that website to help. Thankfully, Bank of America was very easy to work with and helped me. So it wasn't too awful, but it did take some time, because what the police officer and Bank of America both suggested was try to think of every possible account that you have for online and change all of those passwords. And that took me like a full 8-hour day.
Yeah.
It took a while.
Uh,
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. Okay. So here's the answer. You create a personal account so your information is accessible only to you. So the thought behind that is if you're shopping online at Amazon.com, you create your account. That way you're the only one ordering with your name, your address, your credit card information. That account is specific to you.
I have a question related to that. So when you create any one of these accounts,
Mm-hmm.
typically I will see a Google pop-up message saying, you want Google to save this password for
Right.
you. And they're, kind of a bank of passwords.
Mm-hmm.
I always say no, because, that can have all your passwords, which could be compromised, I would think.
Right. I'm the same way. If a web browser asks me, do you want to save this password? I always answer no. In fact, later in the slideshow, we'll talk about how to keep passwords safe and private. Okay, so there's just a reminder, you want to look for the padlock, the HTTPS. Important to keep your account secure on any website. Okay, so we're running up against an activity here. Again, if you don't have like the ability to print pages, you could just basically answer these questions on a notepad. So it says, use a web browser to browse to a website you might use for shopping, banking, social media, or something that else that interests you. If you don't have your own computer, follow along with the instructor. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing the PowerPoint for a brief moment. And I'm gonna share my my web browser instead. Let's see. Here we go. So the tab I currently have active is actually a website, Ask Abby Stokes. The reason I had this on my web browser is because actually she had a workshop in person. I believe it was in one of the library in Canandaigua, the Wood Library in Canandaigua. We actually have this book on our shelves. It may not be borrowed right now, but what her book does, it's called Is This Thing On? It's a book that helps people who aren't necessarily savvy to get up to speed on like technology. So I'm gonna look at her site real quick. I do notice the padlock, if we can see in the top left of the screen where my cursor is, AskAbbyStokes.com, and does have that padlock. If I click after the M in .com, I give it 2 clicks. We also see the HTTPS : // So this is a secure website. Now, another website we could easily visit is, like we've mentioned, Amazon.com. And I'm certain, yeah, they'll have the padlock too, and the HTTPS. Now, there was one website I want to see if I could. So we use a journal here to help us order books called Booklist. And I'm not sure how recently they've done this. It used to be they didn't have the padlock or the S. I wanted to try to show you an example of a website that didn't have the padlock or the S. So they may have recently updated the website now that it is more secure. So the challenge for me would be to try to find a website that doesn't have that information. I can't think of any off the top of my head. But I
Tom,
think
can
Go ahead.
is there a difference between an app and a website? So let's say I have the Amazon app or whatever, credit card app, where it's already, they keep the app, I don't have to keep putting in a password or anything because I've already downloaded it. And is there a
Right.
difference? Yeah, how would you
Give me a sec.
distinguish those? Are those always safe if you've already?
That's a good question. So, because what you're doing is on a smartphone or a tablet, they're all app-based. You have to go to the app store, you download the app, and then the little square pops up on the home screen of your device. So I'm going to do a quick Google search, 'cause I don't think it was addressed in this topic, but on your smartphone or tablet, your Amazon has the app, your bank has the app, but there's also the web browser on a smartphone or tablet. So there's, like, if you have an Apple iPhone, the web browser that comes with the Apple iPhone is called Safari. So you, in theory, could use the Safari app on your phone and do everything through the Safari app. Or if it's easier and it saves your password, you can just download the Bank of America app to your phone, or you could download the Amazon app to your phone. And I think that is something more of a personal preference. What I do often is if I can do something, like I don't like a lot of clutter on my phone or a lot of clutter on my iPad. So if I can do something just as easily within the web browser that came with the app, so for instance, Safari, I'm not going to bother putting the app on my device. But
Tom,
you bring up the, go ahead.
I was going to say, I, for example, have used my iPad routinely and also my iPhone, but I have my bank app on my iPad because it never leaves my house, but I
Right.
don't have it on my iPhone.
Right. So that's where, like, my understanding of how the savvy fraudsters get this stuff done, I'm not 100% sure. Like, if you're walking by somebody with certain apps on your device as you're just, I mean, I'm not sure how sophisticated they are at getting that information. But one thought I did have with the first question was, is it safe to go ahead and use the app and keep your password stored there? So I'm going to just quick Google search, are apps more secure than web browsers? Just curious. So top result, this depends on the website or app. Yes, typically mobile applications are more secure than websites. There are a few reasons for that. Mobile devices have their own authentication software, such as Touch or Face ID. What that might mean is be able to do something like for a fraudster to be able to go into your phone and do something with the app installed on your phone. They actually have to get into your phone first, which hopefully your phone is already secured with a password. Let's see if we can. Let me see if I can find something that might be a little bit more recent. That I saw in one article from 2022. So it's the same article. So Quora is like a question and answer website. Okay. And again, this information where I'm looking at right now, it all depends on who the source of the information is. I'm gonna back out of here. Yeah. Okay. I don't want to spend too much time on that particular question because, to be quite honest, I'm not sure much more an app is than the browser itself. All I can say is, again, with my personal experience, I typically don't like when I use an app on my phone. I honestly, other than, let me put it this way. This is what I tell people when I teach them how to borrow ebooks. For the Libby app on my phone and iPad for ebooks, I leave my account information, I leave it signed in. For the KeyBank app on my phone and tablet, I log out when I'm done, just to be safe. That's how I approach that, if that helps. Okay, so I'm gonna go back into sharing the PowerPoint. Oops. Okay. All right, so we did the first question on the learner activity where we visited a website. Is the website we visited secure? We actually visited a couple. We visited Ask Abby Stotz. We saw the padlock. We saw the S in HTTPS. We visited Amazon. We saw both of those examples in Amazon as well. So again, I think I'm answering these questions for us. What do we do to determine that this website was secure? We saw the padlock, that's answer number 1, and we saw the HTTPS, that's answer number 2. Are we all comfortable with that part so far?
Yep.
Great, thank you. Okay, so next we have strong passwords. Basically, a strong password is one that's hard to guess. Moving on. So how do you come up with a password? So we can pose that question to everyone in the audience. What are some examples of what you folks in the audience have used to create a strong password?
Well, I just come up with kind of a random selection of letters, numbers, special symbols, and generally try to use at least 10 of them because that's what tends to be recommended. But
Right.
I do a different password for everything.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I think you pretty much answered both of those questions. How do you come up with the password and how do you make it strong and secure? And they're gonna talk about a couple of the examples that Tom just mentioned. The longer, the better is one of their suggestions. So let's move on to the next. Go ahead.
Tom, I do sometimes a phrase. So my favorite book is, I'm making this up, To Kill a Mockingbird. And
Sure.
then I take the first letter from each word
Okay.
and that becomes the password.
Mm-hmm.
So
And that's
you know
like
the phrase, but
right. And the woman I highlighted on the web browser, Ask Abby Stokes. Abby Stokes, one suggestion she uses is if you have a favorite song, maybe take a line from your favorite song and use that as your password. So I'm sure we've all.
Tom, I have
Yep.
heard regarding passwords that it shouldn't be actual words that somehow that those are vulnerable.
Right.
So it needs to look like garble.
Right. No, that's I would consider that a strong password if that's what you're. So
Yeah.
for instance, instead of I'm gonna keep it simple, but let's say you want to use the word love, and so you use L, but maybe instead of O you use a 0. And maybe instead of the V, you have on the keyboard, you can hold shift, and then number 6 is the caret that points up. You could have like, instead of a V, you could have the upside down V, which is the caret, shift 6. And then for the E, instead of using E, you could use the number 3. But on this screen, this is, I mean, I feel like we probably all run into this with like creating newer accounts at the very least, where when you're creating a new account with whomever, if you look at the bottom of this graphic, it says a password must be at least 8 characters and contain the following: uppercase, lowercase, letter, number, and a special character. So a lot of websites nowadays are forcing, and I don't want that to sound negative, but they're making us create strong passwords by setting the
other languages and languages that not too many people know, like some Welsh.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so at this point, for our own safety, whenever people are signing up for new accounts, like they have these requirements built in. And if you don't meet those requirements, they're not going to let you complete the account creation process until you meet their password requirements. So like, and Betsy asked earlier, so if you see a website that has the padlock, when it has the S that we're looking for, but maybe when you're creating the account with them and they don't have like requirements for a secure, strong password, maybe don't be as trustworthy of that particular website. Okay, so our passwords can usually include numbers, upper and lowercase letters, symbols such as punctuation marks. So what I usually say, like when they're requiring a symbol, typically what you're going to do is hold down the shift button and tap one of the numbers. For instance, shift 1 is the exclamation point, shift 2 is the @ sign. That's what they're calling special characters. If you see a requirement in a password for a special character, you're just going to want to hold down the shift button and tap one of those numbers at the top of the number, or at the top of the keyboard. Okay, so here are some additional tips for strong passwords. So, yep. I actually know someone who their password is password with the number 1. So, but they never had their identity stolen, so what do I know? But anyway, let's move on. Don't include personal information.
Oh,
Well, I know there have been times where I've used a password and I've used like a zip code. So it's a pretty random set of numbers, but that might not be right, because I would consider my personal zip code personal information. So that might not be the best use of a zip code for a password. So I have since stopped doing that. And this is the
I've
other
used
one.
a house number that I haven't lived in since I was 13 years old.
Right. So that, yeah, I mean, as long as that's not the only part of the password, I don't think that would hurt. And this one's key too. And this is where, again, I get a little frustrated. I've never used the same password for multiple accounts. Because that's just like, that's been like password, that's been a password no-no since day one, using the same one over multiple.
Tom, we must have, between my husband and I, 100 different passwords.
Mhm.
Where do you keep all of those? Because you can't remember them. So it's nice to create these lovely passwords, but you know, my brain doesn't hold on to them all, that's for sure.
Yeah. Honestly, the simplest, lowest tech way to do it is just keep it in a notebook, and then just,
Okay, well,
yeah, just keep that. And they're going to talk about in a couple of slides. They're going to mention that.
okay.
Yeah.
I have a password safe, a little gadget, and I have a very complicated password to get into that safe.
Right. And those can be stored on, like, so I'll give like a personal example. I have on my iPhone an app called Strongbox. So Strongbox, that's where I enter all my passwords. And just like Ann mentioned, to get into Strongbox, I have the master password. Now, when I was creating my I don't want to call it, it's not an account, my profile, I guess, with Strongbox asked me, do I want to share my Strongbox information from my phone with my iPad? And I said, you know what? No, I don't think I do want to do that, because then what that does is it sends that information over the internet. So if the information if the information for my Strongbox is only in my phone and it isn't like a cloud-based, internet-based account, to me, that's just safer. So if I need to enter a password, the first step I take is go into my phone and just unlock that Strongbox and then enter the password from there. And this,
Tom, I have to say, I'm so cynical that I figure if I'm trying to protect my passwords with a Strongbox, that somebody could hack that Strongbox. So I use
Right.
paper and pencil.
right, and that's where I'm not 100% sure how, like, because again, like the example of my personal, the Strongbox app's on my phone. So for someone to get into my Strongbox, they have to crack the password for my phone first, then crack the password for my Strongbox second. What I'm not sure is if there's at this point, at this stage, if like simply being in a room with someone that sophisticated where they can get my Strongbox information without actually touching my phone. I suppose it's possible. I'm not 100% sure about that though. But yeah, as if you have them all written down, because the other challenge I face is I'm left-handed and my handwriting is not that great. So a notebook for me might not be as useful, because if I can't read my own password, what good is it? So I always tell people, like, if you're gonna write down a password, make sure you do it, like, make sure it's clear penmanship. So here are the tips for creating strong passwords. And Tom mentioned this, he likes to use at least 10 characters. The picture example, make it hard to remember. So we have a random set of characters here. We have the lowercase z, uppercase B, lowercase e. I think that's a G or a 6. And that's where I get like, is that a G or a 6? So if you're creating your own passwords and writing a notebook, make sure you clearly put that in there, that you know what the character is. Use short phrases that are easier to remember. So here's an example they gave. Cows help make cheese. But like Betsy mentioned, I mean, that could technically be an easy password to crack. If you wanted to make that password more difficult, you could change a few of the characters. Instead of having an E, maybe use a 3. Maybe use some of capitalization in there. Instead of having a lowercase p, maybe have an uppercase P. Add some special characters too, like you could throw the @ sign, you could throw any special character in there just to help like make that a more secure password. Like maybe instead of having an L, use the exclamation point, because that's similar to an L, but not exactly the same. And here, this is the question. How do you remember? And I think most people are agreeing, keep it somewhere. So Betsy chooses to use a notebook, which is fine. Just make sure that, you know, you keep it someplace where people aren't going to be able to access your notebook. Other people might have like a password keeper on their computer. I have mine on my phone. So here we go, notebook, password, software, and a phrase. Because that's the other example we're gonna run into in a couple seconds here. Maybe if you keep a password notebook, instead of actually putting the password in the notebook, maybe you'll instead keep the phrase that reminds you of what your password is in the notebook. Store in a safe and secure place for the notebook. Instead of writing the actual password, write something that helps you remember what the password is. And so I'll ask another question. Have people, when they're creating online accounts, not everybody does this, but some have, where in addition to creating your username and your password, they'll also have you create security questions. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah,
Yes.
So like a lot of times they'll say, what school did you attend when you were in 5th grade? What's your mother's maiden name? The name of your first pet, the name of the first model of your first automobile, things like that. So that's just another layer of security that some account creators have to complete before they finish setting up an account.
So I just read or an article or something that said, you know, you should make up fictitious, when they ask questions like that, you should make up fictitious answers, because then you're putting out personal information. as
Right.
your security question.
That's not a bad, as long as you remember the answers to those questions, I think that's a good idea. So what's your mother's maiden name? Maybe your mother's maiden name was Smith, but you could put the answer. You could use like, oh, I don't know, Gronkowski. If you're a football fan, you probably recognize the name Gronkowski. But your mom's maiden name wasn't Gronkowski, but if you throw that in there, no one's gonna know.
Hey, Tom or Rochelle, who he just mentioned that, do password managers, the online password managers give you space to indicate what the answer to your security question is, or will they only accept your password?
So the Strongbox app that I use has quite a few fields. There's a username field that you can enter your username in. There's the password field. And the one I've taken advantage of is basically there's a notes field where you can add a variety of notes to it. So yes, that's
Okay.
like, if let's say the account you create just had you answer 3 security questions, you could put that in your notes field. Security question number 1, the answer is October. Security question number 2, answer is Thursday.
Okay, thank you.
Something like
And also, Tom, are you paying for that, or is that a free? I know there are free ones and I know there's
Yeah.
paid ones.
I'm using the free version. They keep asking me once in a while to upgrade to the pro version. So a little background on why I chose the Strongbox app. We have an IT professional on staff at the library who takes care of a lot of the behind the scenes technology for us here. I just asked him, I go, what do you recommend for a good password keeper app for the iPhone? He said Strongbox. And he said the basic app should be fine. The free version should be fine. That's what he uses. So if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. I'm not sure what the benefit of paying an additional fee once a month for the pro version of the app is.
Tom, one more thing I was thinking about is that I read, if you have wherever you keep your passwords, someone you know and trust should know where those are. Because I've read about people who have died and nobody can, no one, and it was a real problem for their the heirs or, children or whatever. So I just thought I would share that. Someone needs to know where to find those answers.
Yes. Yep. And as you bring that up, one thought I had was possibly you could have a copy of that in maybe like a safe deposit box with the bank or something, or with your attorneys, like perhaps you created a will.
The problem with that is that, if you're like me, you often have to update passwords or remove things or add things. And if it's in a safe deposit box, it's not.
Yeah, that's a good
If
point.
you die, they seal your safe deposit box, so you have to have it somewhere where someone can get it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
those
when you die, New York locks the safe deposit.
That's right.
box, so your relative can't get in to get the
That's
bill.
right.
So that's a
Gotcha.
bad place for it.
Right. Yeah. Those are all excellent points. Thank you. Okay, password software. Oh, I'm sorry. We're supposed to just pause at the slide and just discuss. I think we talked about it a little bit. First example, how to keep a safe password in a notebook and keep it someplace safe. And if you want to trust someone with that location, that's fine. We've talked a little bit about password. Like I've given my personal experience with the Strongbox app on an iPhone. There is, if you're using like a desktop or a laptop computer, a popular one with staff members here is called KeyPass. and it's actually spelled Keepass. So if you wanted to try that, and I think if I can't remember if it was Robin or Ann mentioned that they use it and they have created a super strong password just to get into the software before you even look at the account passwords. So that's something. Now, the one thing I just didn't do is I didn't share my password management software across the cloud, meaning I don't have Strongbox on my iPhone and my iPad, and they're not linked, because to me that would be less secure. Now, I could ask the IT professional on staff at the library if he agrees with that. He may say yes or no, but I'm happy with the way I have mine set up. I have it on my phone. It's only on my phone, and when I need to use it, I use it.
This is my password safe.
Oh, okay.
I got it online. I forget which company.
Oh,
Might have
cool.
been Hamacher Schlemmer or.
So that, I mean, from where I'm saying, that looks like a basic calculator, but is that designed strictly for just keeping passwords?
It's called password safe.
Oh, interesting. I've never seen that before. That's neat.
And I have something that looks like a little address book, only it's specific to passwords because
Right.
the blank lines are,
Okay.
you know, the notes and the password and the names and stuff.
Okay. No, that's great. I think that's, I mean, that, as long as you have it someplace safe, you should be fine. And again, here's the example of using a phrase for a password. Cows help make cheese. Again, you can make that even stronger by substituting some numbers and special characters for the letters. Also throwing a couple extra capitalizations in there. Let me see, I see the chat popped up. Give me a second. Oh, no problem, Robin. Thank you for stopping by. Okay.
So Tom, how often should we change passwords?
Oh, that's a good question. Maybe that's why I had my identity stolen, because I get in the habit of creating a password and kind of forgetting about it.
Yeah, well, it's such a pain to do it.
Yeah, and then as I think back to the instructor notes to this particular workshop, they never really mentioned that aspect of it. I feel like I've heard of, our organization does not do this at the library, but other organizations I've heard will, like, they'll have their staff change their staff passwords quarterly.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, so, that's a very good question, though. And I mean,
I've read a few places that say at least annually.
all right, yeah,
Yeah, when I was working, we had to change our passwords for certain functions, and it was probably like quarterly.
yeah. Yeah, so that's a great question, because they don't even address that in my learner or my instructor notes, so maybe I could reach out to the Public Library Association and see if they might amend this particular workshop and just add that question to it, but that's a great question. One that I just had was possibly not that, because that's the other challenge, because like I had to do it all in one day when my identity was stolen. So depending on how many accounts you have, it could take you a while. So yeah, the more I think about it, it can be like a daunting task. But one thought I had was maybe you could put like a little reminder on your calendar, change passwords, but then who knows how long that would take one person in one day? Because I can tell you from personal experience, it took me 8 hours. It was not fun. Let's take a peek at activity number 2 here. Okay, so this was on a previous slide. So what they're doing on this one is they would like you, based on, if you can see my cursor, based on this pretend account, they want you to create a password that's at least 8 characters, has 1 uppercase, 1 lowercase, and a numeric character. It doesn't mention anything about like the special characters, like the @ exclamation point. But if you have a pen and paper handy and you wanted to go ahead and do this particular activity, you can take a minute or 2 to do that. Or let me put it this way, I feel like we have the gist of this particular slide. Do you want to go ahead and move on?
Move on.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
move on.
So again, so here's another activity. So what could we do to make the word happy birthday more secure? My first suggestion would be to not use happy birthday.
Yeah.
Can anyone else think of another suggestion? How do we make happy birthday more secure? If we're set on using that, how can we make that more secure?
You could take out letters like HPY, BRD, and then
Yeah.
add characters and numbers in between.
Change
whatever-
A to at.
And whatever you do, don't add your birth date.
Right. So that's, I mean, like I think was it Rochelle who said, maybe switch the A for an @ sign, maybe switch the I for an exclamation point. We can include a couple of uppercase in there. You could put some additional numbers before, in the middle, or after happy birthday. See, my challenge is when I try to think of a random number, it's like, what is a random number? So that's how I got in the habit of using like a zip code. But yeah. Maybe like instead of the H, you could use the £, what they call that a hashtag now. And similar, I mean, Joseph Smith, probably wouldn't want to use Joseph Smith necessarily, but if you absolutely had to, you could swap out the O for the letter 0. You could capitalize a couple of those. But it's like Tom mentioned at the very beginning, that's the thing about using longer passwords. That's why Abby Stokes, when she was talking about her recommendation, use a line from your favorite song. Your line from your favorite song could be 12 words, not let alone 12 characters. And as long as you're not, when you're typing that into the password field, as long as there's no typos, that would be a pretty strong password.
If you want to use numbers, you might be able to print out the way to get random numbers. There's a random number table that are used in statistics. You print out the page, you put your finger, close your eyes, put your finger on a number, and then use the numbers following it. And then
Sure.
you generate a random number.
Okay. That's useful. Okay, so I'm looking at the other, so like example number 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So no one would, I would hope no one would use that. So instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you could use Rochelle's example of printing out, what was that again? The actual number, the paper that you could print?
It's a random number table.
Random. Interesting. Let me just, I'm gonna go ahead and let's Google that real quick. I'm gonna go ahead and use random number generator and just see what that looks like. Nah, that doesn't. I want to see what you're talking about. So I'm gonna put table instead. Okay. So if we search Google search random number table and then click on images, let's see what we get for that. And then we can click on any one of these. Let's go ahead and just use the one with the green. That could be useful. So like, for instance, I'm hovering my cursor over the 68706. So if you ever stumped on trying to find a random number, search random number table, you'll be able to.
Tom, I'm not sure you're sharing your screen anymore. If
Oh,
that,
I'm sorry.
if you were, yeah, thank you.
Yep. My bad. Go back in. Here we are. We see that okay?
Great, thank you.
Yep. So basically, I'm going to go back to where I was. I went to Google, I searched random number table, then I clicked where it says images, I gave that a click. And so there's a few images of random number tables. So I feel like this is getting very random because I could select this in the top left corner, I can select the one in the middle of the page, I can select the one in the bottom right. Thank you, Raquel, for that idea. You could be able to find some random numbers that way if you wanted to go the random number route. Oh, okay, Betsy, no problem. Thank you for stopping by. Okay, so let me go back into sharing the PowerPoint. Okay. Okay, so we do have about 40 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and start the section on the avoiding frauds and scams. And then if it turns out that we do have to end pretty much right at 3:30 today.
Can I just ask a quick question about this? It's related to this.
Yep.
I was told, or I learned that Firefox is a much more secure browser than Safari or others. Do browsers differ in terms of how safe they are?
I think that a lot of them have reputation. For the longest time, I was also using Firefox. We've had a Cornell IT professional give a presentation on behalf of the library. Coincidentally, October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, so I'm glad they chose this topic this month. We've offered the cybersecurity workshop to patrons at the library in the past, and I'm gonna go ahead, stop sharing again. I'm gonna share my browser screen again, because the Cornell IT professional, he would suggest, and it's gonna be funny because I'm currently using the Chrome browser, but there's
Okay.
another browser called Brave. The Brave browser, you can find it at brave.com. I use it at my work. I'm not using it on this particular laptop I'm working with right now, but at my work desk, I use the Brave browser. Brave has a reputation for being very private. So, and if you're already familiar with like other web browsers, I don't think the learning curve to learn Brave is that much different. So if you wanted to put Brave on whatever device you're using and give it a try.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So anecdotally, my understanding is typically Firefox is generally considered secure. Chrome is also considered secure, but they might, like Google might share your information with other business partners. So that is a concern. Now, is everybody familiar with what we call private browsing? So when you're in a web browser, there's
No.
this, no? Okay.
No,
Let me see if I can give a demonstration of private browsing real quick here. So if you focus on my screen, the top right corner where it says incognito, that is the Google Chrome browser's version of an additional layer of privacy in the web browser itself. What incognito means in Google Chrome, that it doesn't keep your passwords, doesn't keep your browsing history. So when you close your browser at the end of your session, it doesn't remember any of that information. Let me see. If I go into the three dots in the top right corner, instead of going new incognito window, if I just go to new window in Chrome, so this is opening a brand new Chrome window, but anything I do on this, it's not private. It's not what they call incognito. So this, whatever I do on this particular window, it will remember my password and search history. So that's another layer that you can add to your computer if you want to, when you're whatever browser you're using. If you go to those three, at least in Chrome, the three dots, and you select a new incognito window, you can tell the difference by the color they're using. Incognito is a darker color scheme versus the standard window is much more bright and white. And each browser should have a privacy mode. Firefox has one. But then, like even Brave, even though Brave is a privacy browser, they even have that extra layer. If you wanted to go into private mode in Brave, you could do so. Okay, any questions about that?
That was very helpful. I did not know that about incognito. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then, but it depends on which browser, like the Chrome browser calls it incognito. The other browser, like Firefox, might call it something else. I think the Safari browser on Apple products just simply calls it private browsing. Okay. Let's see here. So we have about a half an hour left. So we'll go through the avoiding these frauds and scams at this point. So there's what they're saying, there's a couple different types of scams. One's called phishing and the other one's called social engineering. Phishing typically is when you get an email from, I guess I'll use Amazon the example. So let's say you get an email. It looks a lot like an Amazon.com email, but in actuality, it's a fraudster who's duplicating or replicating Amazon's formatting, and they're trying to get something from you. The social engineering aspect is where you get an unsolicited email or text from somebody who's trying to act like they're a close friend of yours or an acquaintance. And then again, the goal is to basically trick you into sharing some sort of information that you don't want to necessarily share with them. Any questions about that?
Yeah, they somehow know who some of your friends are and
Yeah.
make it look like it's from somebody you know.
Mhm.
But I find if it doesn't have any kind of a greeting like Dear Ann,
Right.
or
Yeah.
doesn't look like something that I would get from that person, I don't open it.
Yep. No, that's a good approach. And I've seen some pretty like I got one that whoever sent it to me looked like they were sending me something from Apple. And as we go through the next couple of slides, we're gonna show you how to identify that, oh, this isn't actually from Apple, it's from someone trying to get information from me. Okay. I'm gonna skip these slides. I want to get to. Okay, does anyone else have any examples of phishing or social engineering scams that they've also experienced?
I think one thing that happens too is if you're going online, because they always say, you should initiate, what you're looking at.
Mm.
Sometimes if you go online, the things that come up in your search are not necessarily the site that you're actually looking for.
Mm.
Because they've engineered it so that their site comes up before the site you're looking for.
Yeah.
So you might click on that site thinking that that's the site you're looking for, and something in the name may be slightly different.
Right. Right. Well, that's a good example, and that's a great point, because a lot of time I feel a lot of us, I'm guilty of it myself. When I do a Google search, I'm hoping what I'm looking for is the very top result, and then it's very easy. Let's move on. But like Rochelle's talking about, the very first result you get from a Google search might not be the best or most appropriate result for your search. So we want to try to get in the habit of, okay, that's a result, but not all of the results. We want to try to find multiple, unless it's like if you just Google search Amazon.com, the top result will typically be Amazon.com. But like the example, what did I search for earlier? Like those, I'm sorry, Rochelle, what was the random number?
A random number table, yeah.
Right, random number table. My first attempt, I actually just random number generator, and that didn't give me what I was looking for. So I searched random number table, and that we were pretty happy with the results we found there. But, and this is what they teach in library school, don't always, and this is what we try to teach like elementary and high school students, don't automatically assume that the top result of a Google search result is always going to be the best result. Let's try to be a little bit more critical of what we're finding before we settle on something.
Yeah, and the other thing is if you're actually looking, for instance, for a government site, right?
Yeah,
It should say .gov or an education site. It should say .edu because
right.
sometimes
Thank you, Nina.
there'll be a .com site
Mhm.
that has the same like introductory, I call it,
Right.
information at the beginning, but it's not .gov, it's .com.
Yeah, no, that's, so yeah, the other one is .org, like the library's website, tcpl.org. Typically, if you run into a website that's .org, you can consider that like more of a trustworthy website. Hopefully it'll have that padlock and the HTTPS at the front of it. But .org websites that generally have a reputation for being trustworthy websites. Okay.
So about your question about whether we'd ever gotten one of those scams or frauds, and I did get one. I did get one that was a phishing. What do you call it? Phishing what? Phishing.
It's a
message.
phishing scam. Yeah,
Yeah.
phishing scam. Thank you, Wendy.
And it was made to look like it was from Apple.
I've seen
And so when they asked me for information, then I knew no. And
Right.
I did call Apple, and the person was fabulous. So
Yeah. So yeah, and what you're doing right now is you're actually kind of you're covering things that we're going to see in the next couple of slides. So for instance, like tips to recognize scams. Have you heard of the person or organization? Can you tell who the email? A lot of these tips, we're going to want to see what they're talking about visually in the next couple of slides. Does the email have mistakes? Are they asking for information? As soon as they ask for like a credit card or a social security number, don't even just delete that message right away, because they're not going to typically, like, I know I've received communication from legitimate, like KeyBank, for example. They'll say in their communication, we will never ask you for your social security number.
right.
So if you ever see an email that does ask for that, you can trash it right away. Here's a key one. Are they trying to rush you into quick action? So, but I feel like you guys already have some pretty good instincts with this particular topic. So have you heard of the organization? So we've all heard from AT&T, or heard of AT&T. And it's pretty blurry, but trying to look at the web address at the top of that graphic, I think it does have the HTTPS in it. But this is where the next couple of slides, where we're going to see visual representations of those like errors, or not errors, but like warning signs, I guess. So like on this example, can you tell who the message is from? If you see where it says accounts and you see all that, basically, I'm going to call it gibberish. This email supposedly from PayPal, but they're nowhere in the account from the sender. Doesn't say PayPal at all. Groups is not PayPal. And then the front half of that, where before the @ sign, that's just a bunch of nonsense. And a lot of times, if you're in an email, you can't see where the sender is. Maybe it's just a little, instead of the sender, all that information, it might say like Tom Smith. If you click on it in your email, it should open up that extra layer to see who the email address of that sender is.
And they misspelled account.
Right. So that's the other example. Is the message itself like poorly formatted or poorly worded? You want to look for those things like spelling errors. Right there, maintain account security. That's a red flag. You don't want to. So yeah. But right at the top there, the whole email address from the sender. The fact that it doesn't say PayPal anywhere in there, that's the first warning sign. The second part is anything before the @ sign is just, that's crazy. No one would create that email address. Hang on, let me go back. Okay, so the first one asking, all right. I'm sorry. This is the first one we looked at. Can you tell who the message is from? So looking at where it says accounts, we cannot tell who the message is from. So we're going to go to the next slide. Are they asking for your information? You must confirm your identity. So yes, they're asking for information. So that's another warning sign. We're not going to give them that information. And then the next slide. the email have mistakes. So we noticed the misspelling, at least for the word account. There's probably other mistakes in here. I think
Well-
this is the one they mentioned in my instructor notes. You were recently asked, but there's actually 2 spaces between the word asked and the word to. It's subtle, but that's a mistake you can look for. So if you see something like a line spacing or a word spacing, that should be, typically if it's a legitimate web or an email from an account that you have, or from a company that you have an account with, they're gonna have their emails really buttoned down and looking professional. They're not gonna look sloppy like this. Here's another example. So are they trying to rush you into a quick action? Congratulations. We want to reach you because you've won $750. Expiring soon. That's the little warning sign right there. Expiring soon. If you don't do this quickly, you're gonna lose out on the $750. And then the next slide is gonna go over the whole, is it too good to be true? Why are you winning $750 for no apparent reason? So if it seems too good to be true, it probably, oh, look, confirm ASAP. So yeah, those are good things to look out for as far as identifying a potential scam. So on this activity, and we've kind of just gone over this, but they're asking us to find 4 pieces of this email that shows it's a scam. So does anyone want to quickly throw a piece that might alert us that this is a scam email?
The
Like, I could
palpability of the account,
What was that?
the palpability of the account.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's very strange wording. Why would someone choose that? I mean, so I'll go ahead. Again, the sender at the top there, that's not like your typical email address from a sender. Do we even know? Do we recognize it all? I mean, what pharmacy are we even talking about? Doesn't say Walgreens or Kinney Drug. So that's a warning sign. And again, here's a subtle one. Find the document attached, space, and. So there's a big gap right between attached and. So, I mean, so I guess the bottom line is when you're reading an email, just be careful as far as the reading part of it. And in a few slides, are going to tell us, make sure you don't click on anything either. Don't click on any links. Don't, like it says here, please find the document attached. Don't open that document. Just leave that alone. Send this right to the trash. So here are the do's and don'ts. Don't provide them with any personal information. Don't reply. Don't click any links or buttons in the message itself, and don't download any files or attachments. Like, so I'm going to go back to the previous slide. This little red PDF logo right here. That's the attachment we're referring to. So if you were to double click on this, it might have some malicious software or malware attached to it that could harm your computer. So don't click the links, don't download or click on the attachments either. And then I feel like you all are pretty good at this part. Do be skeptical. Just from our interaction, I can tell that you're all pretty cautious. Make sure you read the email carefully. And I like this tip. So say you do get that phishing email from Apple, but you know, you're not sure it's Apple. Don't open the email or do anything to the email. Just call Apple yourself and ask them, I received this email. Is it legitimate? And the person on the other end is most likely going to tell you, no, that's not us. Okay, so again, so don't give personal information. So this is supposed to replicate a credit card field. So definitely don't enter any credit card information in a reply to an email. Don't engage. So the red alerts here are basically like if you were on your smartphone, reply to a suspicious text message. If you're on your computer, hit the reply button in the email. Let it go. Click any links. So what they're talking about, the blue login to PayPal, that's a link that most likely will not take you to PayPal's website. It'll take you to their website where they're going to hope that you will enter information. So don't click that link.
And misspelled suspicious.
Where did they do that?
We have.
Oh, right. Yeah, I see it now. Yep. Good guy there. And then download the files or attachments. So if you're already unsure, definitely don't double click on like the PDF logo here. Don't open that file. Just again, especially if you can see like at the top of this email, if you ever see an email address, oops, let me go back to that slide. Anything that long and confusing, you're safe. Just throw this email right in the trash. And again, do be skeptical. So what this graphic is trying to represent is, so the woman's handing this person her credit card number, but what they're visually what they're trying to identify is he's putting on a happy face, but in reality, he's got the criminal burglar mask on and the watch cap. Kind of reminds me of the villain in Home Alone. Okay, yep, read emails carefully. Look for those extra, like you already caught suspicious as misspelled. Looking for the extra spaces between words like the best and to. And this is the point I was going to make. If you get a suspicious email, there's no harm in just going to that. So again, let's say it's KeyBank. Go to KeyBank's website directly. Look for some contact information there and just call KeyBank directly and ask them, hey, I just received what I think is a suspicious email. And they'll be able to help you with that. Okay, so activity 4, how do you know that this website is secure? Click on an area that shows that the site is secure. And so I'm going to go ahead and just hover my mouse over those areas myself. So this example is careerbuilder.com, and it's got the padlock right there. And it also has the HTTPS in the web address. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to see if anyone wouldn't mind sharing which one they think is most secure. Password 1 Maple Street, cows help make cheese, or so basically what this last one is, that's the home row on a keyboard. I wouldn't consider that secure at all. Anyone have any thoughts on this particular question?
Cows make more cheese, I think, out of all. I mean, it
Yeah.
depends. If Maple Street is your street. No.
Right, and then obviously password. And again, we talked about this earlier. If we want to make cows help make cheese the more secure, we could change up some of these characters in that phrase itself. But yes, the answer to this one is the cows help make cheese. Option for remembering your password. Which one is it? I'm just curious, which one made you chuckle? So I'm guessing that's
Well, the sticky note on a computer.
yeah, right.
It's here at my computer when it punches the sticky notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're not going to use a sticky note, and we definitely don't want to use our first and last, because a lot of times your first or last name might be part of your username when you're creating an account online. So you don't want to use that for a password either.
Okay, now what's wrong with the sticky note on the computer if I'm in my house and my house is locked?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's fair. That's a fair question. But if you're at a public, like where I work, now I trust my coworkers, but I wouldn't leave a password on a sticky note next to my computer where I work for sure.
Oh, no,
Just
not in a public place, yeah.
Yeah. But ideally, the best, because the question is, which one's the best option? Probably number 1. If you can put it in a notebook and hide it place nice, that's a good option. Okay, 3 things that indicate this is a scam. Anyone want to take a guess it or share which one jumps out at them?
The pharmacy, because it doesn't say what pharmacy.
Right. I'm gonna say, let me see, let me reread the message carefully.
Well, there's a period after you, and that's not the end of a sentence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so yeah. You must, but there's a period and must is capitalized, so that's pretty sloppy, so that's another red flag. Okay, and there's a
Or you
definite
will lose
urgent,
them. You will lose them.
right, oh yeah, they misspelled lose. But then what I thought Ann was getting at was there's an urgency to this message saying if you don't start using your points, you're going to lose them, but you're not gonna lose them, you're gonna lose them. So, yeah. So I think the key, again, we talk about, let's take our time with these emails. There's no need to like hurry through this, but that's what they're trying, the social engineering aspect of it is they're trying to make it feel urgent. When in actuality, there's nothing really urgent about this. So definitely when it's an email, take your time, take a breath. Because it's happened to me before. I've seen, like, I'll go back to the Apple phishing email that I got. I mean, initially I was like a little bit like, whoa, uh-oh. But then I took a breath and I thought about it. I was like, let's go into more detail on this particular message before I start to worry about it. Okay, so here's another one. 3 things that indicate this might be a scam. So I'm looking at, so the emails from David John, David Joe, 123 at geek.com. So if that wasn't enough.
Did they say
2,
completed when they meant processed?
oh, yeah. Yeah. But
Renewal,
even like Albert, look how they spelled Albert. That's kind of weird.
renewal is not spelled right.
Correct. Because then, I mean, I don't know about you folks, but I personally have gotten similar emails to this, to a service that I have not subscribed to, and I know I haven't subscribed to it.
Yeah.
Like the common one I usually get is the extended warranty on my automobile. Like, I didn't subscribe to your extended warranty, and they're urging me to renew it. I'm like, okay, so this is garbage. I'm just gonna get rid of it.
Yeah.
So if you know you didn't subscribe to some sort of tech support from geek.com and you get this unsolicited email, definitely feel free to just delete it. Yeah. Proceeded successfully. That's another red flag. That process would be, yeah. Okay. You receive an email telling you you've won a prize and you think it's spam. What should you do?
Ignore it. Get rid of it.
Yep. So
Delete
their answer in my instructor notes was basically put it in your spam folder or ignore it. Or, I mean, you could delete it. But the one thing I wanted to highlight was where it says click unsubscribe. So I don't recommend that particular one, because if you unsubscribe to like one of those phishing or spam emails, what that does, that alerts the person on the other end that, hey, we have an active email here. So while they might not get anything from you, what they'll do is then sell that email address to other less than scrupulous people. So I never recommend clicking unsubscribe. It's just as easy to put it in your spam folder, ignore it, or put it in the garbage can. I'm bother with the unsubscribe part. Oh, and definitely don't reply. That top option, don't engage. They mentioned that at the very beginning. Don't engage these fraudsters. Okay, so I think actually we made it through the, let me check the time here. Yep, we got about 9 more minutes. Let me just, yeah. Basically, yeah, we've reached the end of the PowerPoint presentation. Does anybody have any specific questions that they want to ask?
Well, there's one thing that I wanted to mention is that, so for instance, I had gone, I had done a Google search looking for a restaurant, found the restaurant, thought I was clicking on their website, and then this big flashy message comes up.
Oh,
Don't turn this off, don't turn off your computer. We got your computer. So I immediately turned off my computer.
yeah. They don't really address this in my instructor notes, but it's happened to patrons here at the library at our public stations, and we pretty much do the same thing. We just power it right off, even though it says not to. That's the basic guidance we've gotten from our IT professional on staff is just like power it off and restart the machine. And hopefully, so it sounds like what happened is some little like attack came through the internet itself.
Yeah.
So I don't really have a great answer because I'm relying a lot on the instructor notes that they provided me for this presentation. And since they didn't cover that part, I kind of just fall back on what our IT professional asks us to do here. Now, generally, you wouldn't turn off your computer without going through the typical steps of like asking it to shut down.
Mhm.
But sometimes we have to just hit that power button until it turns off by itself.
So going back to your unsubscribed, we all, do business or whatever through,
Right.
and they've got your email and they
Mhm.
bombard you with emails with
Right.
whatever offer. And you
Yeah.
get tired of it. And,
Mhm.
I've at times hit unsubscribe
Right.
and sometimes it verifies and you don't see or hear from them again. Other
Right.
times it just never seems to work, which,
Yeah. No,
they
yeah.
keep hitting you and it makes me wonder, should I have done unsubscribed or not?
Yeah, let me clarify that more. So, example I'll use, there's online retailers like Hay Needle or Bass Pro. I've unsubscribed from legitimate email from those types of retailers. So I think what you'd want to avoid unsubscribing to is from any email that kind of looks suspicious to begin with, like those email examples that we provided in the slideshow, the really poorly written or poorly worded emails with the misspellings and the urgency to act fast, act now. I would suggest not clicking unsubscribe to those types of emails.
I use a basic principle. If I click unsubscribe and then it asks me to enter my email address, I don't do that.
Right.
If
Right.
it unsubscribes automatically,
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah. But to answer Tom's question, then thank you, and that I agree with that. Tom, if I'm on the right track, I feel like if you subscribe to maybe like LL Bean or NPR.org, and at this point you don't really want to hear from them anymore, those examples I would go ahead and say, yeah, go ahead and unsubscribe to those particular recurring emails. It's the ones that you just don't trust in the first place that you don't want to click that unsubscribe button, because if they're already kind of like sketchy or shady, unsubscribing is just probably going to open your email up to additional, because they're just going to turn around and sell it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I have a question. I went to another workshop similar where the person, it wasn't a library person, but the person recommended using DuckDuckGo instead of Google.
Oh, yep.
I just wondered if that really is significantly better, safer, not better, but safer.
I think in terms of like protecting your private information that Google might want to share with other people in Google's circle, yes, you could probably use DuckDuckGo instead. It'll just take a little bit getting used to, I think, if you're used to using Google, because Google's basically the standard. Because I think that brings like similar to the point I made earlier about using Google Chrome as a web browser. It's a fine web browser. It'll keep your information private from like those unscrupulous, well, those sketchy people. I can't say the other word I want to say, but the people we're concerned about. So what I guess Google's reputation is like just sharing your information with other people within Google's circle, which isn't necessarily okay either. But at this point, what can we do? I mean, we're all kind of like, what's the phrase? We're all on the grid at this point. Getting off the grid is probably going to be kind of difficult for most of us because of all the different accounts that we do have. But yeah. So DuckDuckGo, if you want to give that a try, and then like the other example was that the Brave web browser.
Yeah.
If you wanted to give that a try.
Yeah.
What is this? DuckDuckGo. How do you spell it?
Here I'll stop sharing the slideshow and I will open up a browser. Here, this is the web address for the Brave. I'm just going to type
Don't see it.
.com.
Are you in the chat or?
Oh, you're right. I forgot to share again. My mistake. Give me 1 second. Thank you. Where is that? Okay. Let me back up 1 step here. So we were here. We were at the brave.com browser. Are we seeing that okay?
Yeah,
Okay. And then I'm going to click forward 1 because I searched. I didn't search. I just typed in the web address field. Go.com.
go.
So this is saying search without being tracked. Whereas when you search on Google, like your searches are being tracked. I'm not quite sure what the depth of that tracking is. More polished IT professionals might be able to answer that. But what this is saying is it's just a more private experience. So let's search something. What's a good Viva? So Viva Ithaca, New York. So top result, Viva Taqueria, which is what I was hoping for. Boop. And then there we are. So we just conducted a search for Viva Taqueria at DuckDuckGo. And so, and you brought up the default web browser, I'm sorry, the default search engine in the Brave browser is actually DuckDuckGo.
Oh,
So like your default search engine in Chrome will be Google. Your default search engine in Firefox typically will be also Google, but you can change that in the settings if you choose to. But with Brave, if you want to give the Brave browser a test drive, just know that DuckDuckGo will be the default search engine. What else can we search? State Theater.
I mean, I've been using it for quite a long time and
Mhm.
once in a
DuckDuckGo?
great, yeah, once in a great while, I'm not satisfied with the
Mhm.
results. And then I just use Google.
Yep.
I don't, yeah, but
That's what I've run into myself, actually. Yeah. Yeah. There's no harm in trying, you know. Let me take a quick peek at the slideshow real quick, see if we're missing anything. Okay. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead. Not much left on the slideshow itself, so let me share the rest of that slideshow. So this slide says, thank you for visiting. Congratulations. We talked about learning cybersecurity. We built skills to recognize a secure website. We built skills to make strong passwords and how to recognize and avoid online scams. Discovered useful tips to help you stay safe online. And last slide is today's presentation was provided by AT&T and the Public Library Association. So they had me add our website address here. So you can always visit tcpl.org or digitallearn.org for additional free information. Now, if you are someone who can learn like with self-paced tutorials, I definitely could suggest Digital Learn. They have quite a few courses on there if you want to take a peek at those. And then thank you, Rochelle, for visiting. I'm glad that you enjoyed this. But what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to stop sharing this slideshow because we're pretty much done with the slideshow. I'm going to go back into the web browser. And then I'm going to share that. This is basically the library's website. If you ever, in fact, I'm going to show you from the homepage how to do what I'm going to show you to do here. Here's our homepage, tcpl.org. We do offer one-on-one help by appointment. So if you hover in this main menu at the top and you go to events and click on calendar, and then on the left, you can click in the keyword search help. scroll until you find the apply button. Go ahead and click apply. What this will do is it'll show you our upcoming events for the one-on-one tech. So if you ever have additional questions, maybe you want to follow up on this particular workshop. Let me slide this over here. For instance, we have a one-on-one session available on Saturday at noon. And then we have a couple more next week. And then we have one on the 31st. If you ever wanted to make an appointment, you click on the actual title of that event, the purple lettering there, you give that a click. You scroll the, go ahead, definitely read the description. If you're ready to make an appointment, you enter your first name, enter the last name. We ask for your email twice. We ask for your phone number. And then in this field, it says, please describe what you would like help with, including specific details to help the tutors with their. So we're asking you to help us help you by giving us specific details on what your question is.
So I've done it 3 times. I had 3 different people and they were all very helpful.
Right, because at this point, one of the results of the pandemic is we lost some staff members, because I've actually been part of the staff that does the one-on-one tech help by appointment, but based on our somewhat lower staffing, I haven't been able to get myself back on the schedule. I'm hoping to soon, whether it's December or sometime in January, because right now all the tech help providers are volunteers at the library. But thank you, June, for that feedback, because I do agree that for the most part, our volunteers have been pretty solid providing that service so far. So I'm glad that you were able to get help that way. And I think that's basically the whole presentation. If anybody has any more questions. I appreciate the feedback in the chat. I'm glad everybody enjoyed it so far.
Thank you.
Yep, very good. Thank you.
No problem. Like I said, if you have follow-up questions, you could send them to the folks that love living at home, and they can forward them to me, and then we can be put in touch that way as well.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much,
everybody. It was
Tom.
nice interacting with everybody. I'm glad to provide this. It was fun.
Thanks a lot.
Yep. Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Never know where to wave my hand, but
I know.
thanks again
Goodbye.
for have a good day.
You too.
Yep. Thanks.